So I just want to give some background on how we got here today. So I recently purchased my grandpa's old Model A. He's owned it since about the 90s. Over the last 7 years or so, it hasn't really ran, as Grandpa was really unable to drive it there towards the end. So since then, I've purchased it from Grandma, and this is me trying to get it going for the first time. So to start, it's obviously had fuel in it for the last 7 years as well, or at least so I thought. So I wanted to make sure all that was cleared out. That was the sediment bowl. There was some sediment in there, but for the most part, it was pretty gross. And that was me checking to make sure that the fuel was indeed empty. So thanks to whoever either emptied it or appreciate the car for leaking the fuel out. But from there, going on to checking spark. So obviously the spark plugs on this old engine were pretty dirty. And then with time doing their additional corrosion, went ahead and cleaned them up. Got some of that old carbon dust off. And then the Model A version of spark plug wires right there were what I was cleaning up, making sure we had a good connection there. And obviously, since it's set for the last 7 years as well, went ahead and added a few drops of oil directly into the piston. Make sure we weren't starting up completely dry when we do try to crank this over. Otherwise, everything looked pretty good on that area. Got everything cleaned up, good connections, good tight fits, and I did go through all four cylinders there. I just didn't feel like it was worthwhile checking and showing each one. So from here, I pulled off the carburetor while there was no fuel in it, nice and easy to get apart. Make sure everything was clean. I know this was an area that Grandpa was struggling with there towards the end last time we drove it. But for the most part, it was pretty clean in there. So I went ahead and cleaned up some of the split line surfaces, make sure we were going to get a good seal. So that's what I'm doing here. Got a fresh piece of Scotch-Brite, a little ballistol to help ease off some of that rust. You can see the gasket there ripped a little bit during removal. Just used some RTV to get that sealed up and get it going again. We'll get it started here at the end. But the carburetor, it's the Zenith one that's real desirable for the Model A's. It's real period correct. Grandpa did actually have two spares of the less desirable. I think it's the Tillisons or something like that. But not the look everybody's going for. So was real happy to have this one in such good condition. Still cleaning it up, making sure everything's good and clean. Ballistol is something I've used to help get rust off quickly and clean it up real well. Here I am opening up the RTV. This is probably not a permanent repair. Over the long term, I don't know that I'm going to leave this engine in here. I did want to get it going, though, just to kind of show the condition of the car. And if I do decide to sell the engine in the future, it'll be something, good video to show that it does indeed run. This is an old quart gasket, so the RTV was really probably needed to get it to seal it all. Just carefully putting things back together here. Trying to make sure I don't get any RTV globs anywhere we don't want it. So getting it cleaned up and getting it resealed here. There we go. That whole thing's pretty much held together with one bolt. Some of those other pieces in between pretty much act as dowels to kind of locate the two surfaces together. But really, it's just the one bolt that holds it all together. And that piece you still see sitting on the table, I'll really install it here in a bit. But it's kind of really the only makeshift fuel filter other than the sediment bowl. Just different times. You definitely see a lot more than that on a modern car today. There you go. Final tightening. Pretty much ready for installation at this point. Here we are, just reinstalling it back on the engine. Just something kind of cool to note here on the Model A's, the top side of that exhaust, the rustier part there where it says Altwell, that's actually the heater. So there's a little door you can open up, and as long as you're moving, basically the heat off the exhaust acts as your heater. So no liquid exchanger with a blower inside. So you're basically still pretty cold, slightly cutting the chill in the winter, best case. Fuel line reinstalled from the sediment bowl back to the carburetor, just tightening things back up. At this point, I'm just reinstalling, I guess, the choke lever or choke rod. You can twist it back and forth to actually give more fuel, and then pulling it, of course, does the choke as well. It's awesome how easy some of this stuff is to install, and how easy it is to work on yourself. Here I am checking the timing for the distributor. This was something, since it hadn't run in so long and we were struggling to get it run, even 7 years ago. I figured it was probably worth spending the time to go through here. Didn't really get a good shot of this, but what I ended up finding is that we were about one spark plug off on the timing, so it was never going to start. But what I'm grabbing there in the front is what Ford had done is on the timing gear on the inside, there's a little divot, and they give you a specific, basically, bolt on that cover that you can turn, or you can remove and flip around. And that pin tells you when you're at top dead center on cylinder number 1. So that allows you to set the timing and get everything good and crisp. So I don't remember what brand this is, but it's a timing wrench to help make it easier to actually get it timed correctly. It has instructions on it. It makes it real easy. So I didn't show it, but I actually had to retime it because when I had moved it, I had moved it back a little bit and then taken the slop out of that timing cam. So I didn't re-show it here, but it's timed, but not quite right. It was nice once I got that oil in there. I could really just turn the motor over with just the fan and the fan belt. So I knew it was moving freely. I knew there was a chance to get it started again. Just reconnecting all the quote-unquote spark plug wires. Little, I guess, spark plug bars, basically. Cleaning up the connection. Basically, the ignition coil there on the top connects through the top of that distributor. So I was cleaning up, making sure we had a good connection there. The old battery was gone. I think I showed like 0.1 volts on it. Even for a 6-volt battery, that's pretty low. I went ahead and tried to charge it. It wouldn't take any charge. So fortunately, I was able to find a new battery at a local battery shop, a little auto parts store. They had one in stock. Kind of hilariously, he didn't think they had one. He's like, "Oh, we don't normally stock 6-volt. That's something we usually have to order." And I was like, "Look, man, I came here because your website said you guys had one in stock. You mind taking a look in the back?" Sure enough, they had one. So I was happy to get one, and pretty affordable too. You get it installed. Kind of a unique place for it. Right there beneath the driver's seat. And you only see 2 pedals there, just something worth noting before starting it up. That's the clutch and the brake. The gas pedal is actually that little silver pin there on the ground. And it probably only has 3/4 of an inch of stroke or so. But that's actually your gas pedal. And then up there on the top side, there's another little button that's probably a little bit harder to see. That button up there is actually the starter. So you don't use the key to crank it over the engine. You use that button up top. And yes, those floorboards are truly wood. So that's, I guess, that's where that phrase came from. But, so here, just checking fluids, make sure nothing's dry. It's make sure the oil doesn't look funny, like it has water in it or anything like that. Then obviously you need to check the coolant. This is really what prevented me from driving it around right away. Come to notice a little bit later after adding all that water in. Fortunately, it only took about a gallon to top it off, but there is a leak in the radiator somewhere. Even without the engine pressure, putting water pressure on it, just the head level was enough to start weeping out of the radiator. So that's kind of the debate I'm at right now. Since I am looking to put a Ford flathead V8, similar to that era, in there, it will take a different radiator because it needs 2 inlet and 2 outlet ports, whereas the original 4-cylinder only needed 1. So, haven't quite decided yet if I'm going to go ahead and try to get that radiator core fixed so I can drive it around. I'm kind of leaning towards not, but we'll see. So finally, the moment of truth, trying to crank it up the first time. Oh, look at this point. So basically what had happened here is this was that timing slop I was talking about. I think I paused after this. Came back the next day and retimed it. Didn't put the slop back in at this time. And it finally cranked. Here we are with the cooler head after retiming it. Yeah, and just some additional, background on the left side there. What I'm messing with is actually the spark advancement. Obviously, nowadays, you don't have to do that. It's built in. The engines know what they're doing with the computer. And then on the right side there is actually the throttle adjustment. So basically, I'm adjusting auto or the throttle level at idle to help it, smooth out a little bit. In those days, you had to adjust everything. But here it is running for the first time in about 7 years. Ran real good. I got out of the car, to just see how things were. So when I noticed the water leak, I decided I better shut it down before it overheated. Real happy to get it going again. Thanks for watching, everybody.